Hey guys, so I've been having a pretty interesting Twitter conversation with a few people, and I just thought I'd share some of the ideas that came up as a result of the discussion. Uh, so uh, the general topic was spiral dynamics. If you're not familiar with it's a model that's used very often by Claire Graves and Ken Wilber. It's a cyclical um, overarching map of consciousness, the evolution of consciousness. And it's more macro perspective than micro. It's more about um, sociocultural evolution. So I used to be very much more supportive of it, but I have some general ideas that not really contradicted, but I just feel it's too simplistic. If you begin to ask a few difficult questions. Well, for starters, the conversation began when somebody was asking, all right, if socialism is orange-green, which represents rational, pluralistic, then where does that leave the fall of communism? Is it a regression? Is it a sliding back to more rationality than pluralism, or what? Because in the spiral dynamics model itself, it's just a single spiral that goes up. So what happens if something new emerges, which is a new idea, and it collapses? What does the map actually say about that sort of thing, the collapse of communism? And then what does the map say about well, let's say the usage of more rationality in the world, which is still very present. We have very mechanistic, rational-oriented capitalism that pretty much governs the world. And even though there are more socialistic and pluralistic aspects, you could say that it's still dominantly rational orange. So I mean, it leaves a lot of questions up because it doesn't really intuitively work with the messier dynamics that happen in the world. Um, so that was my first response. But really, it's linear where it shouldn't be. I don't think there's anything wrong with incorporating a linear idea of reality to some degree. I think there are other multilinear and there's nonlinear dimensions to studying the evolution of societies. So one of the more interesting ideas that were posited um, was that spiral dynamics is interesting and all, but what I would really prefer to see, perhaps in this century, with the use of computer mapping and real-time observing of memes and the way people think and how they change over time. It's going to be a very interesting century with the internet. Um, but it would make more sense to have something like a phylogenetic tree of consciousness, um, one that accounts for starts and stops, but on the whole can demonstrate, as a tree of life demonstrates, the development towards complexity, certain patterns that are representative throughout the entire tree that help the tree develop, um, as well as certain linear progression. For instance, um, the progression of complexity in biological life is more linear. It's sort of an exponential snowball effect. Well, you could say in the development of societies, as far as physically, we become more complex, and socially we become more complex as we bump into each other and our population grows. So there are many interesting phenomenons and aspects to study, and I don't really think that um, a linear model, a solely linear model, even though it can incorporate thesis, antithesis, and synthesis, which spiral dynamics kind of does. It does show a nice um, spiral or development of the ideas, their counter ideas, and how it's evolved to transcend both. Um, I think that there are many other options that are that fill in the gap that spiral dynamics can't, simply because of the way it's set up. As you know, I mean, it's almost like a ladder. I know they say it's more dynamic because it's a spiral, but the model itself is almost like a ladder because there's a set description of characteristics for each one, and it's kind of like just kind of activates like one, two, three, four, and then like it's too. It seems too artificial to really describe the evolution of consciousness. And I think there will be many new opportunities to develop a phylogenetic tree of consciousness, and many other models that I can't even think of. But I would love to see some kind of development with that, because you can take what is already there and try to discern patterns in it. Um, and this is the second part of spiral dynamics that I wanted to talk about. Even though it seems to describe emergence as, like, I don't know, green is pluralism from rationalism, so on and so forth, there's a phenomenon behind that. What, like, go a little bit deeper, because each meme, each rung of this spiral kind of describes the characteristics, the symptoms of a shift. It can describe some of the symptoms that are going on in each one, some characteristics, some ways of thinking. But to a true map that would really, really get into the details would ask even deeper questions. Well, what is the pattern between these maps, between these levels of development? What are the patterns that are messier and more complex? What about the exponential growth? What about the physical aspects? How does agriculture affect society? I mean, more food, more population, bigger population, new ways of orienting, and uh, and new social complexity because of physical mass. Um, so it's all very interrelated. That I think we could have a less linear approach, not necessarily only nonlinear, but a less linear approach that tries to incorporate everything from a more um, multidimensional perspective. Because if you think about it, it's linear spatially, as in one, step two, step three, step four, and it's linear temporally because it seems to be just one way up the whole way through. You know what I mean? So I think there are many other dynamics, ironically, that are going on that need to be accounted for. Um, if any of this makes sense, let me know. Okay, that's it. Let me know if this works. I hope this isn't just 10 seconds like the last video. Thanks for listening.